For every second that a man seals his mouth, says the Gaon of Vilna, he merits on that account to bask in a concealed light, something which no angel or other creature can imagine. As it's stated in Tehillim chapter 34, verse 13 and 14, who is the man who desires life and loves days, that he may see good? Guard your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceitfully. So here we see that the Gaon of Vilna is giving us a critical secret to success, but even more so, a cure for literally all ailments that a person brings on themselves. In simple street language, shut up more, you'll be better. That's in essence the simple terms. But we'll ask why? Why do I need to make myself a mute, as the sages advise? Best idea for a person is to make themselves into a mute. Don't speak things unless it's absolutely necessary. And even when it's absolutely necessary, you have to double check if it's permissible, despite your own understanding of it being necessary. And again, if there's no other choice, you have to understand that speaking has a price, a very big price. Such a big price that most of the damage that happens to a person's life is because of their speech, because of how they talk and what they say. He decides to tell his wife, honey, I love you, but I think maybe you could afford to lose about 15 to 20 pounds. Already, in a matter of 5, maybe 7 seconds, he destroyed his marriage permanently. With that advice that he gave his wife to lose 15 to 20 pounds, whether right or wrong, he simply destroyed his marriage, most likely permanently, because the confidence of a woman comes from the perspective of her husband. Meaning, how he views her is how much confidence you have. If he insults her, abuses her, thinks she's ugly, thinks she's fat, thinks she's too skinny, thinks she's this, thinks she's that, she is going to be a miserable person, a very sad person. And if a sad wife is a sad life. But he thinks that he's doing her a favor. What? Rabbi, it's true. It's true that she needs to lose weight. Whether it's true or not, that's really based on your perspective. But even more so, even if something is true, doesn't mean you have to say it. And then really even more so, sometimes guys forget that they themselves are not exactly such a catch. For whatever reason or another, guys are very critical of their wives' looks, and they forgot that they also have an image that stares at them when they look in the mirror, and they're not exactly a beauty prince. And that's the funniest thing in the world. Guy says to you, listen, Rabbi, I don't know what to do. This wife of mine, or the shidduch, I don't know, I think she's a little too heavy for me. And who are you talking to? You're talking to a guy that he himself is at least 30 to 50 pounds overweight, has 1 or 2 teeth missing in noticeable places, barely knows how to complete a sentence without making a mistake, and has about $4 in his pocket, 3 of which he borrowed from his mother. Yet he has the audacity to become a Mr. Critic of his wife or somebody that he wants to go on a shidduch with. And it's bizarre to me. It's bizarre to me that guys have gone to this level. Now you could say, yeah, but men were always critical of women's looks. Not necessarily. Not necessarily the way that people are today. It's crossed all lines. So much so that I've literally heard men tell their wives that they don't enjoy the way that they conduct themselves in privacy, and therefore they need to work on themselves. Now, why would a man ever say such an awful thing to literally murder his wife in cold blood and think that's going to be conducive to their marriage? I'll tell you why. He has watched so much filthy, disgusting pornography that he has the illusion in his mind that that's how real life is. So everything that his wife will ever do, he compares her to that filthy zona that he watched in a video, or the ones that he sees in the street, or his past experiences, and he's trying to compare a tzadika to a zona. And he says, how come you're not like the zona, but pretend to be a tzadika? Like, what does he want? He wants his wife to be like Bilam. He wants his wife to be like Bilam. Bilam was the biggest, most wicked person on planet Earth, but he wanted the death of Abraham and Yitzhak and Yaakov. He wants a righteous woman, but he wants her to look and act like a zona. This, Rabotai Yekarim, shows how far we are from where we need to be. Why? Because a person that understands what is required in a marriage to be successful, in a life, in just simply derech eretz, looks at this and says, are you sure this is a real human being? Are you sure this is a religious person? And unfortunately, sometimes it is, or at least they pretend to be. So it's very, very important that a person needs to know this first klal. A man that shuts his mouth, or a woman that shuts her mouth, more often than not, typically will have a much better life. And that's in essence what the Gaon Vilna has given us as footnote number 1, or advice number 1, whatever you want to call it. He says, for every second that a man seals his mouth, he merits on that account to bask in the concealed light, something which no angel or creature can imagine. If you know that every single time you say something, your husband gets angry. Every single time he says something, she gets angry. Then perhaps, maybe you should talk less. But she wants me to talk. Oh, so maybe you should consider what you're going to say before you say it. And see, when I say this, he always gets angry. When she says this, he always gets angry. So don't say it. How about that for a chiddush? Don't say it. No, but I have to. Oh, you have to? Okay, so, have a miserable life. I know this sounds ridiculous, Rabotai, but this is really the root of many people's problems. They simply can't shut up. They simply cannot shut up. They feel the need to talk and say a lot of things. And as a talkative person myself, Baruch Hashem, one of the main changes that I applied to my life over the years of getting closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu this is all I talk about. I talk Torah. Generally speaking, very, very little socializing, whether it's with friends or students or my own wife and kids. Virtually, we try to have zero small talk. That's the goal of life. Zero small talk, zero nonsense. If you're going to say something, it has to have meaning, and usually the things that have meaning have connection to the Torah, or it is the Torah itself, and that's really all that's important in life. Now, what do I see? If it was a chart like I used to look at when I was on Wall Street, it would be a chart that, you see, continue going higher and improving the situation. As I talk less nonsense, my life improves. Anytime I fall and I decide to have ruach shtut and I decide to say some type of sentence full of nonsense, then you see the chart crash. And you have to fix it, you have to do tshuva, and you go back up. This, Rabotai, is one of the greatest things that a person can apply to their life. Now, of course, again, a little bit of talk, especially with the wife or with the husband, is necessary, but not every little bit is necessary. Not every detail is necessary. And needless to say, all the friends and the colleagues and so on, those are generally not necessary. But again, people think that it's necessary for a person to socialize. But that's because they learn this from the media. You need to socialize. So all day, if they're not watching the news to find out how other people are socializing about other people's lives, then they're just repeating what they saw on the news or some other type of network with people. So in essence, it goes from people being nosy and looking in places they don't belong and talking about it on the news nonstop. And if you didn't hear it once, you'll hear it again every single hour for the whole day. And then the people that watch, as soon as they stop watching, they go communicate the very same thing that they saw to other people. Oh, did you see what happened today? Biden did this one did that, this one died, this one's alive, this one came back to, dot. You know who does that? Parrots. People have become parrots. And it's sad because you're people. If you were parrots and your goal was to become parrots, this would be great, but you're not a parrot. You're a person. Why are you acting like a parrot? It's a good question. I don't have an answer for that. Maybe people do. Now, the Gaon Vilna is saying every single opportunity that a person remembers what he learned today and applies it to their life and stays quiet, they're literally creating an angel. They're creating a light that even the angels that are up in heaven, that see things that we cannot even imagine, even those angels cannot comprehend the magnitude of that light. That's how much greatness a person creates as a result of being quiet when necessary. You'd be surprised. The more quiet you become, the more analytical you become of your speech, and the more you realize how much of it is unnecessary. But again, every person needs to understand, if you're talking divrei Torah, you can talk to no end, from morning to night, 24 hours a day, 120 years. But if you're talking about other things, that's where the limitations have to come in. The Gaon Vilna specifies, rather than saying don't talk, he specifies for every single rega, every second. Every rega is not really a second. According to the Gemara in Masechet Brachot, it says that Bilam the Rasha had one power that even Moshe Rabbeinu did not have, which was that he knew the rega that Hashem is judging the world. And during that time, he can curse anyone, and Hashem would bring the decree on them, because he knew that there's already judgment in the world during that moment. So the Chachamim say, what is a rega? If you look at the commentary, the accepted opinion is that a rega is 1/15,000 of a second. That's a rega. And Rashi says a rega is not something that a human being can truly comprehend and really put into perspective. It's such a little bit amount of time. Here the Gaon of Vilna says, every rega v'rega, meaning every second and second, every moment and moment, every rega that a person stays quiet, it's a very, very big deal. Not only telling a person that you shouldn't do bad things, you shouldn't say stupid things, but rather, even if you're simply a sewer mouth, you have to talk all the time, and what you're going to talk about is not going to be any good, holding yourself back for even a few moments, you'll get a reward for it. You'll get punished for this garbage that you said. But at the very least, if you're able to hold yourself for a few moments, like a few moments, you're going to get a reward for that. That's how gracious HaKadosh Baruch Hu is. That's how important it is to think about what you're going to talk about before you say it. So here we see that the Gaon of Vilna is giving us a little bit of a different perspective on life, which is that the value of a rega, the value of a moment, is not something that most people really think would make a difference in life. But truly, if you look into the words of the Chachamim and you study them, you see that a rega can determine the difference between a eternity of good or an eternity of bad. Rabbi Yaron alav shalom, many times I heard him say that it takes 70 years of toil and hard work to earn yourself a place in heaven, but only a rega to lose it all. And the more you understand it, the scarier it becomes, because you know it's true. 70 years of working to try to earn yourself a keep for an eternity of good in heaven, in Olam Haba, but a person can chas v'shalom ruin all of it in a rega, in a minute, second, less than a second, 15,000 of a second. So here we see that an action that takes a rega could lead to endless reward, or the opposite, chas v'shalom. One of the Gdolim in the previous generation, the Rav of Yerushalayim, Rav Zelig Reuven Bengis, told his family one time that he wants to do a celebration for a Siyum HaShas, completed the Shas. And the family that knew the father's study schedule, they didn't know how could this be, because they knew exactly when he would complete the Shas every so often, and this was not on the schedule. So they asked him, Abba, why the change in schedule? He says, no, this is not the same Shas that's on the daily limud. This is a different Shas. Different Shas? When did you learn this Shas? He said, every time I found myself having a 5 minutes that I'm going to have to wait for a Brit Milah to start, or for a wedding, or an elevator, or a bus. Every time I knew that I had 5 minutes, I would start learning the Shas during those 5 minutes. An accumulation of all of those 5 minutes over the years, I've now completed the entire Shas Bavli. Shtabach Shemo La'ad. Here we see how much the Chachamim valued each and every single moment of their life, and took it as something that they not only appreciated, but they utilized it. When one of the Gdolei Ador, Rav Naftali Trop, became critically sick, the students saw that the Rav is not getting better, and they took drastic measures and added to their prayers that each and every single person is, in essence, donating a piece of their life to the Rav. They took this down, they wrote it down. How much do you want to contribute? One guy said, I'm going to donate an hour of my life. Kadosh Baruch Hu would take that hour for me and give it to Rav Trop. Another one said, I'm going to give 2 hours. Another one said, half hour. Another one said, 2 days, 3 days, 4 weeks, a month, and so on and so forth. They gathered up the nice list, and they came to the Chafetz Chaim. And they asked the Chafetz Chaim, the Gdol Ador, they said, K'vod Harav, we have this campaign to accumulate as much life as possible to give to the Rav, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu will have mercy and give him part of each of our lives. BeEzrat HaShem, many more years to teach us Torah. What is the Rav willing to give to Rav Trop? Chafetz Chaim thought about it extensively and then said, Rega. Rega? Ken, willing to donate a Rega. When a person first hears this, if they're not in line with the significance of our Chachamim, their first impression is, what's going on? Why is the tzaddik so cheap? Only giving a rega, 15,000 of a second? He's not giving it to some Rasha, he's giving it to a tzaddik. Why only a rega? But if a person is in line with the mindset and ideology of the tzaddikim and understands who and what we're talking about here, they actually get an extraordinarily valuable lesson from that answer of how valuable a rega is in the eyes of a Chacham, because they know how many mitzvot they can learn during that time, fulfill during that time, how much Torah they can fulfill, how much Torah they can learn. And each one of those regas has an endless value. And the young kids that came to the Chafetz Chaim got an extraordinarily important Musar lesson from the Chafetz Chaim that changed many of their lives, realizing how much you could achieve in a rega. When Rav Leib Chasman was preparing his keilah for the end of Yom Kippur, this was the final Yom Kippur of the Rav, he told his keilah that Prophet Yonah in chapter 1, verse 12, in Sefer Yonah, says to the people on the ship, lift me up and cast me into the sea. Rav Chasman asks, why did Yonah Navi add the words, lift me up? Why did he not just say, throw me overboard? Obviously, you have to lift somebody up before you throw him overboard. But needless to say, what was the extra word for? And you can't say, oh no, that's just the way he talks. No, this is, first of all, it's a prophet. Second of all, these are words that are written in the Tanakh. There's no extra words. Why is a Kadosh Baruch Hu feel the need to have these extra words, as you would seem to have, written in the Torah, where Yonah is telling the people, lift me up and then throw me overboard? Rav Chasman says, because Yonah appreciated the value of life. Even one final moment of life is extraordinarily valuable, and therefore he asked the sailors to take an extra moment to lift him up, as that extra lift will delay his death by a moment. And therefore he says to his keilah, if we see the Yonah Navi, that he himself asked them to throw him overboard because he knew that if they don't throw him over the board into the sea, then they're all gonna die anyway. Why should they die for his sin? So he knows this has to happen, but why not live for an extra moment? If Yonah valued life so much that he wanted to live that extra moment, says Rav Chasman, let us appreciate this valuable lesson and use that last few moments before the end of Yom Kippur to do tshuva. What about all you were supposed to do in the last 25 hours? No. Do tshuva now. Now do tshuva. Now, a person that sees some of the things that Chazal say, you know what? Okay, valuing time, I see it's relevant, but valuing moments, hard to relate until you see yourself in the story. Sometimes a person watches Shiur Torah and they contact me and they say, Rabbi, listen, I saw a shiur, I want to use the story or the thing that you said, I want to say it on my Shulchan Shabbat. I say, Chazak u'Baruch, go for it. Now, sometimes people tell me, listen, Rabbi, I tried saying what you said, but my family wasn't listening to me. They just I don't know, I saw they were just looking at me and they really weren't really interested. I got really excited about it and I prepared and I did everything possible. I finally said it and I don't know, they all looked at me like, okay, thank you for finishing. I feel like I'm wasting my time. Says the Chafetz Chaim to one of his students who came to him with the same exact question. He says, Kvod Harav, I gave a speech to the Keilah, and the Keilah looked at me as if they were looking through me, waiting for me to finish. I spoke to them for an hour and a half, and I can see in their eyes that they're counting the seconds before I finish. And when I completed everything, they were more excited about me completing the speech than the words that I say, because the words that I said had no impact. I feel like I'd rather just learn Torah, and it's worth much more. Says the Chafetz Chaim, that's a mistake. Why it's a mistake? Look at what our teacher, the Gaon Vilna, has taught us. That for each and every moment that a person seals his mouth, he merits on that account to bask in a concealed light, something which no angel or other creature can imagine. How does this relate to you? It relates to you because for that 1 hour, for that 1 hour and a half that you spoke, or for that 5 minutes that you spoke on your Shulchan Shabbat, people were paying attention. People were not chit-chatting. People were not saying LaShon HaRa. People were not talking idle talk that was worthless. They were there quietly, even if not willingly, but out of being cordial and respectful, they stayed quiet for 5 minutes. Oh, I wish I can have such reward like you, says the Chafetz Chaim, where you had hours upon hours of people not making sins because of you. Oh, what a great reward you have. I wish I had the same. Such light you created. Meaning that even if you think that your Torah speech and your story did not impact people, the fact that they paid attention, or even if they didn't pay attention, but they literally did not commit any sins by simply just being quiet, that in itself is an extraordinary reward that you're going to get for. Needless to say, if you actually do give them chizuk and get them to do tshuva and get them close to Hashem. But even if you don't, even if you literally say things that just go over their heads, they don't understand a single word that you say, it's still praiseworthy, it's still good. Chazaku baruch, you're doing good. You're doing good. Why? They didn't sin for that 5 minutes. They didn't sin for that 1 hour. Needless to say, if it's on Shabbat people get together, and many times if they're not a Torah-based home, then what happens? And by Torah-based home, I don't mean religious. Torah-based home means that people are learning Torah every day. Even if they're working, even if they're making millions, it doesn't make a difference. But they're learning Torah every single day. If they're a Torah-based home, then on Shabbat, everybody shares Divrei Torah. The father, the son, the this, the that, even the kids share Divrei Torah. Everybody talks Torah. What's the parasha? What's this? What are you learning? What's this? Everything is connected to Torah. But when it's not a Torah-based home, then what does everybody do? Everybody brings to their Shabbat table the laundry of the entire neighborhood for the entire week. Oh, did you hear what happened there? 3 houses next door. Yeah, I think he divorced her. Oh, did you hear what happened there? The rabbi says that he's okay for not giving her a get. Oh, did you hear what happened there? He's taking him to Beit Din. Oh, did you hear what happened over there? They got into an accident. Oh, did you hear what happened over there? I think he's sick. And everybody brings everybody's laundry to the Shulchan Shabbat, and then they're surprised the disaster strikes. Says the Chafetz Chaim, you know that your house is full of this junk. Everybody's bringing their garbage pail to the Shulchan Shabbat. And you have 5 minutes of Torah in you. 5 minutes, not more. You heard a shiur, and you have 5 minutes that you remember. Go and say those 5 minutes. Tell them that sipur, that story about the Baal Shem Tov. Tell them that story about the Chazon Ish. Tell them that story that you heard in a shiur Torah by Rabbi Reuven. Tell them one of those stories. Tell them. Why? Because for those 5 minutes, they will not make sense. That is extraordinary. Because it's not only that you yourself did not make sense, but now on your account, every single one of them did not make sense for 5 minutes. Oh, how praiseworthy you are. I I wish I had your share, says the Chafetz Chaim. A person understands the magnitude of the words of the Chafetz Chaim and the Gaon Vilna, understands how valuable a rega really is. And the Chafetz Chaim says in the Chovat HaShmirah in chapter 6 that a person that guards their tongue is using the most effective cure for all illnesses that a person can have. You have a physical problem, your body hurts, your head hurts, whatever body part, some type of illness that you have, Chafetz Chaim signs off his name. You want a cure? Be quiet. Be quiet. How much? As much as possible. How much as much as possible? If it's not Torah, don't talk. That's the best cure. That's like cure for cancer. That's how great it can be. Now, of course, the person says, I'm going to try, I'm going to do it, and 3 minutes later they fail. And not only they fail, they start saying nonsense. So a person needs to understand the ramifications of talking nonsense. We cannot just say that something is good. We cannot even just say that you will get a reward for it. Because the most inspiring tool that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into creation is fear. And the person is inspired by fear more than he is by anything else. Fear of loneliness, fear of poverty, fear of hunger, fear of punishment of other kinds. There's all types of fears that a person has. The only fear that is permissible is the fear of the Almighty. But that does not come to us naturally. Rabbi Yisrael Misalan says that's the one fear that you have to work your whole life on acquiring. Everything else in reality is forbidden. But nonetheless, if a person fears speaking idle words, speaking things that are not just wrong, but simply a waste of time, that person is going to have the pasuk of who is a man who desires life and loves days be fulfilled. They'll have a longer life. They'll have a better life. Now, the Gaon Vilna continues and says, guard your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceitfully. Now, a person that is clueless, we have to explain to them in the practical terms of this world. If you see that you are having marriage problems, you're having all types of problems at work, it's usually because of things that you're saying. It's usually because of the way that you communicate. And unfortunately, that is the root of many problems. If you can find it in yourself, enough love for yourself that you'll keep yourself quiet, you'll see that your life becomes better. You'll see that your life becomes better. Now, if you can't find it in yourself to keep yourself quiet, then don't come complaining. But we still want to help you. So we have to give you the other aspects of things. The Gaon Vilna says, this being quiet, not just get you a good reward, get you to have a better marriage, perhaps even a promotion at work. Not just that. By being quiet, this will atone for every sin and save a person from Gehinnom. As we find in Mishle, Proverbs chapter 21, verse 23, he who guards his mouth and his tongue guards his soul from troubles. Now, if it's just talking about speech, why does it say guards his mouth and his tongue? So Chachamim come and say, it says guards his mouth from eating and drinking things that they shouldn't be. Either it's too much or it's forbidden foods. And guarding his tongue from idle words, needless to say from forbidden words. LaShon HaRa, Rechilut, rumors, all types of things. Because the Gaon Vilna says, if I don't guard my mouth, I'm gonna go to Gehinnom, and I don't want to go to Gehinnom. No, but Rabbi, I'm not even talking about LaShon HaRa. I'm talking about just, let's just talk between, friends. Oh, so idle talk. I don't want to go to Kafakela. But you just said Gehinnom. Yeah, there's Gehinnom, there's Kafakela, there's different departments for different speech. Different parts for different speech. Says the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat, page 152b. A person that makes certain types of sins, such as LaShon HaRa, goes to Kafakela, asks the Gemara, what is Kafakela? Kafakela is a very special department that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, where he has these angels that are angels of destruction. And they take the soul and slingshot it from one end of the universe to the other end of the universe while doing a few flips and tricks and beatings to that soul throughout the whole way so it doesn't forget them. It's not a roller coaster of fun, but rather a disaster. And in fact, it's not even something that atones for sins. It's pure and utter revenge for a person going against the king that created him. If that's not enough, the Gaon of Vilna says, another verse, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and woe to the person that kills himself for one ill-conceived word. One ill-conceived word, one word you said to the rabbi inappropriately. One word you said inappropriately to a Talmidie Chacham. One word inappropriately you said to your wife, to your husband, to your child. Many parents think that just because they have children, it's like a free-for-all, they're allowed to embarrass them in public. You embarrass your kids in public, you're going to get punished for it. In fact, if you embarrass them for no reason, you'll get punished for it, even if it's private. People think, oh, he's my kid, I can do whatever I want. No, you can't. No, you can't. You can't just decide to embarrass your kid just because you feel like it. Of course, there's chinuch, there's proper chinuch. Or teachers. Teachers, I remember from my day, if you got in trouble, you did something, teacher will keep you after class and write this, I will never do this again, 1,000 times. And you go there, and you write, and you don't finish. Okay, you have to do it again in front of the whole class. Right. That's not chinuch. That teacher will get punished for it. Why? Because the only thing that the kid learns from such punishment is that their hands hurt. That's it. That's all they learn. Their hands hurt after they write a lot. So people think that they could just simply say whatever they want, do whatever they want. And the Gaon of Vilna tells us there's a price for everything. There's a very, very serious price for everything. So much so that a person could literally kill themselves because of a single word. What is killing themselves? If they understood the magnitude of their speech. If they understood the magnitude of their speech, they would understand why the speech is killing them. In so many words, Rabotai, the cost of speaking nonsense, we're not even talking about speaking really bad things, false rumors, LaShon HaRa. Simply speaking nonsense has a very, very big price. Speaking things that are forbidden, obviously the magnitude of the sin is even worse. The magnitude of the sin is even worse. But what can we do that sometimes there are people that are addicted to talking? Addicted to talking. They can't stop talking. But not talking things of wisdom, rather talking nonsense. Pure and utter nonsense. Where no one that's outside of their circle of crazy people will understand them. And even the people within their circle of people usually don't understand them, but if they speak with big words, people pretend like they understand what they're talking about. So either it's crazy people think they speak to each other, or it's simply people are too ashamed to admit that they have no idea what you're talking about. You'll find this very often in missionary circles, people that are heretics, people that are anti-Torah, lefty liberals, people that pretend to be good, but really in reality they're idol worshippers. You'll see this a lot in the socialite world. A lot of things like that are very common. And you'll see that people love to hear themselves talk. Other people are waiting for the opportunity to talk themselves, or they want to seem like they're smart and they're nodding and agreeing with everything, even though they have no idea what this person is talking about. And there are some people that just love to hear themselves talk. And it's unfortunately, a very, very horrendous disease where you'll see certain people just talking, but they're not saying much. They're not saying much. They're just going to tell you the same thing in 15 different ways, and it was enough to even have it in one way, and even too much when you heard it the first time. But they want to repeat it every time you see them. They want to tell you about the directions they took to get to your bank, to get to your house, to get to your office. They took the I-95, but then they decided to go on a turnpike, and they got gas on the way, and then somebody called them, but it was the wrong number. And they'll tell you a bunch of things that in reality don't really mean anything. This is also, people sometimes get offended when they ask me for a phone call and I tell them I don't take calls anymore. I haven't taken calls in a few years. I generally don't take calls. Very rarely will you ever find me on the phone, and typically it's either an emergency or a special case. Generally speaking, I don't take calls. Why? Because when people speak on the phone, they feel perfect freedom to just waste your time and talk about everything in the world that doesn't matter. Everything in the world doesn't matter. Whereas when people send you a text message or a voice note, typically they have enough decency to keep it to the point. But when you talk to people, when you meet with people, they'll tell you about all types of things that really mean nothing. Mean absolutely nothing. Oh, where do you guys do this weekend? Where are you going next weekend? Oh, what kind of jacket is that? Oh, I like that tie. Oh, how long are you guys married? Like, who cares? I never understood those conversations, but people do it. Why? Because they're addicted to talking. Now, if you told that guy, listen, would you rather hear the things I want to say or go smash your head against the wall 15 times? 9 out of 10 people will go smash their head against the wall. Why? Because they really don't want to hear you talk. But since they themselves are addicted to talking, and they know the only way they get to talk is if they give you a turn to talk. They say, okay, listen, I'll go through it. Yeah, go say whatever nonsense you want to say, and then I'll have my turn. I'll say my nonsense, you'll say your nonsense, and before you know it, we'll both be back on the highway, creating more nonsense to talk about when we get to the next appointment. Most people's lives is this nonsense. You see this on the news, you see it in the papers, you see it in books. You see that the books of today, generally speaking, you'll see an entire book could be 1,000 pages. The whole story could have fit in 15 pages. So what's the extra 985 pages? Simple. You wouldn't pay $20 for a 15-page book. You wouldn't pay for $20 for a 15-page book. So they have to put a lot of fluff. Same thing with the news. An hour and a half they're talking about same mumbo jumbo that could take 30 seconds. And generally speaking, most news is not relevant to the viewers that are watching it. Whether it's the stock market news or it's all types of financial news or all types of governmental news, to the average viewer it does not matter. You can't do anything about it. You don't even understand it. And in reality, it's not even consequential or affecting your life in any way. But unfortunately, people are addicted to this stuff. They're addicted to this stuff because they want more stuff, more content to talk about and sound educated. So you'll see very often the people that try to pretend like they are the thinking men, like this Rasha missionary called Clavin. He calls himself the thinking man. He thinks he's like the Aristotle of the generation or something. He's the thinking man. So the common denominator among these thinking men, name dropping. Name dropping. They'll name you all types of big people that were before them, famous people, some people nobody even ever heard of, some people did speak of, but either way, when you say somebody's name, oh, that means you are well read. No, it just means you wasted a lot of time memorizing names. That's really all it means. And no one's going to double check if you actually read what you're saying you read, and if what you're saying actually was said by the guy that you said you read his work. But the name dropping goes, and then they tell you all types of people that they know and places that they went to. Like, who cares that you read this or you went there? Tell me the bottom line, tachlis. What's the point? What can I learn from it? And if they even have an idea to begin with, generally speaking, that entire idea could be summed up in maybe 25 seconds. And if the guy's really intelligent, a minute and a half. Why? Because generally speaking, secular knowledge is empty. There's not much substance to it. So you don't need many words to express it. And many times people are just so addicted to speaking that they'll just say the same thing over and over and over again without any thought whatsoever of whether this should be cut or not. And that's what happens. So the addiction to speaking is something that I would say most people have, unless they're very self-conscious people or introverts and don't talk at all. And this is something that a person should be conscious of. Why? Because those extra words that you're using have a price. They have a price. That price is either a golden ticket for your heaven, because it's good and valuable words that will help people get closer to Hashem, or it's simply nothing, idle words, and you're in essence creating more fuel for your own punishment. That's choice number one. Choice number two, or condition number two, I should say, is people that simply can't move on. What is that? The Rav Galinsky said that he was once on a train, and on this train, he was trying to get some rest, all the different journeys and battles that he would fight. He needed to get some rest, but the guy next to him was some Gentile that simply could not stop repeating the same thing, which is, I'm so thirsty. I'm so thirsty. Oof, I'm thirsty. thirsty, thirsty, thirsty. I'm so thirsty. And he would just repeat it over and over and over again. Now, aside from the fact that Rav Galinsky has derech eretz, he's also a very small person. So slapping the guy in the mouth like we all want to do, it's not an option for him. So you have to hear this, and he can't rest because the other guy just keeps talking out loud about how thirsty he is. As soon as the train stopped, Rav Galinsky runs out of the train, hurries up to go get some water, which wasn't as easily accessible as it is today, and makes it right back to the train before it leaves the station and goes to the next one, and gives the guy the water. He would think, Tzaddik, problem solved, good for you, great story. But it wouldn't be a story if that was the case. Why? He gave him the drink, the Gentile drank the water, and then continued saying, wow, I was so thirsty. I can't believe I was so thirsty. You know, sometimes you get thirsty. I was so thirsty. Really, really so thirsty. Says Rav Galinsky, sometimes there's certain people that simply can't move on. They can't move on. They just can't move on past the point that they're stuck at. I have certain people that I've been talking to, and they literally have been at the same exact point as what they were when I first started talking to them. A year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And that's actually one of the greatest things that you see as a Baal Tshuva that comes from a non-religious background, non-religious friends, non-religious community, and non-religious world. One of the greatest things that you'll see along the way, it doesn't happen right away, because when you first start doing tshuva, most of the time people call you crazy, or they simply ask you who died. You know, you decide to keep Shabbat, you put a kippah on, ask you, who are you saying Kaddish for? Who died? Like, why are you religious? Like, people think that someone needs to die in order for people to become religious. Apparently, Judaism has bad marketing, so people think this way. Now, when you first start doing tshuva, most of your friends, siblings, and so on will tell you either that you're crazy, or they're just not really understanding what you're doing, and they think perhaps it's a phase that you're going through, like a midlife crisis equivalent. Now, all of those people will, generally speaking, let you do what it is that you're doing and without really bothering you. But there are, of course, always messengers of the Satan. Sometimes they're your brothers or your sisters or your parents or your spouse even, your co-workers or boss. And they try to discourage you. They try to tell you, don't do it, you're crazy, this is too much, take it slow, one mitzvah every 10 years, or maybe at least one every 7 years, like the Shemitah. You know, this year you'll keep Kashrut, in 7 years you'll keep Shabbat, in 7 years from there, maybe perhaps you'll keep Tahat Mishpacha. Before you know it, by the time you died, you'll keep 10 mitzvot and go to Gehinnom. But they don't realize the magnitude of things. They don't realize reward and punishment is not a suggestion or an idea or a theory, but rather a reality, both in this world and the next. So they try to discourage you, because watching you do tshuva, getting closer to Hashem, is, in essence, reminding themselves that they're staying in the same place. So they try to discourage you. And if, and BeEzrat HaShem, when you overcome that obstacle and you continue running forward, taking on everything you possibly can, don't listen to those fools that say, listen, slowly, just keep half of Shabbat, just eat kosher in the house one day. Don't listen to people like that. Whatever you know, do it. Whatever you know, do it. If you can do it, do it. Don't think, if I keep half Shabbat, it's good. It's not good. You're going to Gehinnom. You either keep Shabbat or you go to Gehinnom. There's no half Shabbat. There's no 1 minute Shabbat. There's no once a year Shabbat. You keep Shabbat all the time, you go to heaven. You don't keep Shabbat, you go to Gehinnom. Simple. Anyone that tells you otherwise is a liar, or clueless, or both. But the reality is, a lot of people say slowly. Now, you should run. Why you should run? Because if you run, you'll have a lot of chizuk from Shamayim. That momentum will keep you going. And before you know it, a year will pass. And if you compare yourself from 1 year to the next, you'll see some drastic changes. Changes in your understanding. Changes in your perception, changes sometimes even in your looks. Now don't worry, those changes will continue. 2 years out, you'll see even more drastic changes. Not just drastic changes from year 2 to the beginning, but rather drastic changes from year 2 to year 1. How much you've changed. Even more looks, even more understanding, even more clarity, even more knowledge. Then you go to year 3, drastic changes. How much changes could it be? Endless changes. That's really what's supposed to be. Endless changes. Every year you're supposed to change and improve. Why? More understanding, more Torah, character trait development. You're better at this. You found out that you're worse at that, and so on and so forth. Now, once you're already on that train and you're in it 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you'll notice something else. You'll notice something else that perhaps you didn't really notice or pay mind to during the first 2, 3, 4 years. What will you notice? After you're in it, I would say for at least 5 years, perhaps maybe even more for some people, you'll notice something significant. That out of your entire circle of the people that you knew and know, your family, your friends, colleagues, whoever, all of those people that have not done tshuva are exactly where they were 5 years ago or worse. And you are the only one that progressed in their life. They are still dealing with the same or worse life that they had 5 years ago. You have progressed milestones where those very same people that were trying to get you to stop and not do it, in some cases are starting to come back to you and ask you for a blessing, ask you for advice, ask you for guidance. Not always and not all the time, but nonetheless, they start coming. As you progress even further, 6, 7, 8, 10 years and further, you'll see some more of those people. If they're still in your circle and still come back and they humble themselves to realize that they're losers and you're not. And you'll see that it doesn't matter how long the time frame is. It could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, it could be 1,000 years. Those people that did not do tshuva, literally their lives stayed either the same miserable life that they had, empty, purposeless, and simply full of problems, marriage problems, child problems, money problems, everything's a problem, or they got worse. So he was fighting with his wife when you first started doing tshuva. 5 years progressed, you've done tshuva, you got married, you already had 2 kids. He either got divorced, or he still talks about how much he hates his wife, he can't stand her, he's this, he's that. Same thing, nothing changed. Nothing changed. Same thing with business. The guy was a cheater, liar, filth of the earth, doing everything he possibly can, but figure he's gonna get ahead. You progressed 5 years, you have a normal job, you're learning, you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, you're making ends meet. Sometimes you need a miracle, sometimes it's an open miracle, sometimes it's a closed miracle, but either way, you're living, you know where Parnassah comes from anyway, you're not worried because you're connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the source of all good, Him. 5 years have passed, either he lost everything because he finally got caught empty-handed, or he's still doing the same con man acts, cheating people, lying to people, still, struggling to make ends meet. It doesn't matter that he's now making $100,000 a month because he still doesn't have any money at all. It doesn't matter that his company has 50 employees because all the employees can't stand him and they're all thinking that the company's going to out of business any minute. And literally, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. It only deteriorates at best. It just does not get better. And everybody's like that. The marriage is still bad. The relationships are still bad. And it's more like they see you as like, how did you do that? How did you just slingshot yourself forward, and we're still in the same garbage pail that we're in? Now, most people are not going to admit it. Most people think, listen, he got lucky. She got lucky. Yeah, you had it coming. No, you had this, you had that. No, give all the excuses in the world. It's no excuse, Rabotai. It's simply HaKadosh Baruch Hu blesses those that love Him and curses those that don't. That's what happens. And the most people don't understand that these types of things are just a small token of the blessing that Hashem gives to a person that trusts in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? Because one of the things that the Gemara in Masechet Chagiga says that the righteous will get as a reward is to see the ashes of all of the wicked people under their feet. The ashes of all the wicked people are under their feet. I heard Rav Mizrahi Sheikheh elaborate on that point. He says, why would you want to see the ashes of the wicked people? If you're a righteous person, why would you want to see the ashes of the wicked people under your feet? I mean, you're in Gan Eden, you're in heaven, you want to learn Torah, enjoy eternity of good, you're enjoying the Shekhinah. I mean, why do you care of what the wicked are doing? He says, no, part of the reward that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives the righteous is the constant reminder of what would have happened to you had you not done tshuva. You would be the ashes. Now, when you're constantly reminded of what it could have been and how you really are, where you are in a better position, the value of your reward is infinitely greater because you're realizing what the other option was. There was no middle ground. So one of the things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives the righteous, even in this world, that do tshuva, serious tshuva, is he shows you in real time, if you have patience and enough dedication, how you're progressing. You got married when no one else thought you were going to get married. You had kids when no one thought that you were even able to have kids. You have parnasah. You have this. You have progress. You've moved on with your life, and they are still in the same lonely, miserable garbage pail they were in 10 years ago. Nothing has changed, and if anything, they're just uglier now, and fatter now, and more miserable now. That's it. Nothing positive has happened. You say, yeah, but some guys made a lot of money during the last 10 years. Doesn't mean anything. And the more you know those people, the more they'll tell you how that extra money they have means even less than they thought before they had it. Why? Because they're even more miserable as a result of more success. They're even more empty as a result of having all of these different things. And that's in essence what the Gaon Vilna is trying to tell us. If we are going to stick to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's not just about keeping mitzvot, but also running away from sins. Running away from sins begins with your eyes, what you look at, where you look, all of the different things, but also you have the speech. You have the speech. What words do you choose to use? How do you describe certain things? How do you express yourself? When do you talk? When are you quiet? Who do you talk to? Why do you talk to them? And what do you talk to them about? All of these things have a significance and have a very, very steep price. Very steep price. Some people are addicted to talking nonsense and they'll get punished for it both in this world and the next. Some people are simply addicted to their current status. They just cannot move forward. The guy told me that he's looking for a job 6 years ago. Today, he tells me, Rabbi, I'm looking for a job. Wait, are you telling me that in 6 years, no one was willing to hire you and you're expecting me to believe that? If you lived, I don't know, in a jungle somewhere, maybe the lions and, I don't know, the anacondas over there don't want to hire a human being. I would understand it. But if you live in America, in Europe, in developed economies, during an economic boom, regardless of whether it's real or it's a bubble, it's irrelevant. And you're telling me you can't find a job? No, Habibi. There's a problem here. There's a very serious problem. You were looking for a job 5 years ago, you're still looking for a job. You were looking for a wife 5 years ago, you're still looking for a wife. Life doesn't work that way. Hashem is hiding his face from you. Hashem is hiding his face from you. You should be asking, not why don't I have a job? Why don't I have a zivug? You should be asking, why is HaKadosh Baruch Hu hiding himself from me? What am I doing wrong? What can I do better? What can I do better? But sometimes people are too focused on the superficial nonsense that they think is the world, the illusion of the world, the matrix of the world, if you will, and they missed the whole point. They missed the whole point. The guy got the drink he complained about for a half hour, and instead of moving forward, he can't. He's just talking about being thirsty. But you're satiated. Yeah, but I was thirsty. And yes, this will drive a normal person insane. And guess what? Most people are insane. Most people are insane because they can't move on. They can't move on. The breakup happened 5, 6, 7, 10 years ago. Fine, it was a terrible breakup. He cheated on you. She cheated on you. Terrible people. He's bad. You're bad. It's over. Finished. 10 years ago. Move on. He moved on, you should move on. She moved on, you should move on. Stop imagining that you're going to come back to each other. It's not going to happen. It's gone. Finished. Go. They fired you already. Look for a new job. Just go on with life. No. Make a point. I'm going to stay this way. I'm going to win. This, Rabotai, the root of it comes from ego, of believing that the world is supposed to run according to your tune. It's a very, very sad state for a human being, and only they can actually get themselves out of it. typically requires some type of traumatic experience, unfortunately. That's the second thing. Second type of speech that a person has to be careful of, the type of speech that there's no progress in it whatsoever. No progress, they're not willing to move forward. The third one, obviously, is the most common one that people like to talk about, but most people don't really know the meaning of, which is LaShon HaRa. LaShon HaRa, Rabotei Yekarim, is not something that the average person understands because they think the LaShon HaRa has to be false information. Not true. LaShon HaRa is real. LaShon HaRa is true. Oh, LaShon HaRa has to be unfavorable. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. You tell people certain things that even if they're favorable on somebody else, it could be considered as LaShon HaRa. How so? The Gemara in Masechet Bava Batra, page 164b. One of the people says, I see you have beautiful handwriting. I wrote this. Oh, no. It's not me. He has beautiful handwriting. The other guy who was here, yeah, he's the one that has really, really nice handwriting. He wrote it. Chacham says to him, oh, that's LaShon HaRa. That's LaShon HaRa. Why? I say beautiful handwriting. Yeah, that's LaShon HaRa. Why is LaShon HaRa? So they go back and forth and they say, or explain it in such a way where if you say he has beautiful handwriting, he's not here, he left. And this must have been written by him because he's the one that has beautiful handwriting. You think, oh, I'm complimenting him, it's a nice thing. Chacham says, listen, if you say it's beautiful handwriting, perhaps the other guy's going to think, why does he have beautiful handwriting? It's probably because when he was a kid, he was a bad kid. And they used to punish him a lot and make him write everything on the board 1,000,000 times. And because he wrote after writing everything 1,000,000 times because he's such a bad kid, he developed good handwriting. Now, as far as halacha, according to the Rambam and the Chafetz Chaim, say, just saying he has nice handwriting or something good by in itself is not enough to be LaShon HaRa unless you embellish it. Meaning you say, he not only has nice handwriting, he has the best handwriting. Not only is he financial off, he's a multi-millionaire. That's LaShon HaRa. If you just say, listen, he's okay, basic things, if it's necessary to some extent, not always LaShon HaRa. But to go and tell people things that are with embellishment, again, true, but with embellishment, oh, he's really rich, he's really successful, he's the best, that can be decreed as LaShon HaRa. Why? If he's really successful and somebody says to you, listen, you know Steve? Yeah, Steve. Yeah. What do you mean, Steve? Steve with the Porsche? I don't know if he has a Porsche. Well, he also has a Ferrari. I don't know if he has a Ferrari. You know Steve with the big house, that $3, $4, $5 million house up the block? I'm not sure. Greenbaum? Yeah, Steve Greenbaum. Yeah, so he has a $4 million house, a Ferrari, a Porsche, a stock portfolio. You give him the entire guy's bank account. Guess what? Every single word that came out of your mouth, LaShon HaRa. Why? Because maybe Steve doesn't want everybody to know he has all these things. And you can say, wait, but if he doesn't want people to know that he has a multi-million-dollar house, don't buy one. Buy a cave. Go live in the mountains. No, it's not your business to share it. If he chooses to share it and live there, that's one thing. But for you to share it, it's a completely different thing. That's number one. Number two, once you tell people, oh, Steve is rich, maybe those people are going to say, you know what? If Steve's rich, maybe I'm going to call him and ask him for a loan. And maybe Steve doesn't want to lend money. Oh, if Steve's rich, maybe I'm going to go to him and tell him, listen, I have this wedding, I can't really pay for it, and this and that, and put him on the spot, show up at his job. Listen, Steve, I know this office you have here is simple, but I know where you live. Joe told me you live in that $5 million house. You have a Ferrari and what is it? A Porsche? Yeah, it's a new one. Yeah, I know. He told me. That's LaShon HaRa. And for LaShon HaRa, there's a special Gehinnom for it. And some say it's a mix. Gehinnom, kafekela, one batch. It's like a omelet, shakshuka combo. Why? Gaon Vilna says, you did not like life enough to watch your speech. When a person likes his life, he watches his speech. Where do we see all of this in the Torah, Rabotai? Of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu in His ultimate mercy makes us look like Chachamim, but He has it in this week's parasha, Yishtabach Shemo La'ad. This week's parasha, Parashat Chayei Sarah. Sarah, Imenu, left this world, goes to Olam Haba. Avraham lives many years more than her, even though she was a greater prophet than him. And Avraham, it says here in the chapter 23 of Genesis, first few verses, you go to verse number 2, it says Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, that's the place, which is Hebron, in the land of Canaan, and Avraham came to eulogize Sarah and bewail her. Lifkota. Now, Chachamim say, if you look at the Sefer Torah, and they typically do this also in the Chumashim, the way that the Hebrew word lifkota is written is unusual, where the size of the letter Chaf inside the word lifkota is unusually smaller than the rest of the letters. And it's not a printing error. Every Sefer Torah has a small Chaf. Every modern day Chumash, and even the older day Chumashim, have this small Chaf, meaning it is a significant teacher. There's some reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu told us to write this Chaf in small. And Chachamim say that's because it's trying to teach us that the crying that Avraham had over Sarah was smaller than you would think. Smaller than you would think. Some are going to say, the Kli Yakar, for example, has a commentary on it saying that Avraham was eulogizing his wife. It's emphasizing the noble traits of his wife. Then Rav Hirsch says, here it's a small Chaf, this bewailing that we're talking about, it's a small Chaf because he's crying that he did outside was not much. Most of his mourning was in privacy because your mourning should be in private. But then comes the Zohar, and some of the Midrashim all say the same. That's because Sarah, he didn't cry much for her. Why he didn't cry much for her? Because Sarah made a mistake. Where did she make a mistake? In Parashat Lech Lecha. Sarah got upset with Avraham when she saw that he had a baby with Hagar relatively quickly after they got married. And she says to Avraham that perhaps you were praying to have a child, but you were not praying for me to have a child, because see, you got blessed with a child, but I'm still childless. So she says to Avraham in chapter 16, verse 5, she rebukes Avraham. There's an argument between them. Sarai says to Avraham, the outrage against me is due to you. It was I who gave my maidservant into your bosom, and when she saw that she has conceived, I became lowered in her esteem. Let Hashem judge between me and you. Here you have an argument between Sarah and Avraham. All marriages have some type of dispute at some point or another. If you don't have a dispute, it's usually because one of the spouses died. Generally speaking, if you're both alive, you're going to have a dispute. It happens from time to time. But a healthy marriage also has solutions. Here we see that Sarah is upset with Avraham, and Chachamim say it's because she believes that Avraham didn't pray for her. And she is saying, let Hashem judge between you and me. Let Hashem judge between you and me. So the Chachamim say, when a person makes the mistake of uttering the words, let Hashem judge you, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, you want me to judge somebody? Let me judge you first and see how you are. And then I'll judge what you want me to judge. So when Sarah, in essence, asked Hashem to judge you and I, do we let Hashem judge you? In essence, he's going to judge both of us, but in essence, judge you because you're the one that's wrong. Hashem judged her, and in essence, she lost years of her life. Now, that explains why she lived a shorter life, but it doesn't explain why Avraham cried less for her. So the Zohar Kadosh says something that if it wasn't written, we wouldn't be allowed to say it. It wouldn't be allowed to say it. The Zohar Kadosh says in Parashat Chayei Sarah, Avraham is teaching us, you're not allowed to cry, mourn, over somebody that commits suicide. Shem Yishmo. Meaning, when Sarai Imenu says, let HaKadosh Baruch Hu judge between you and me, she saying things that were the equivalent of suicide. In her level, needless to say, none of us should ever say to our wives or our husbands, let Hashem judge you, or even to anybody else, Hashem will judge you. Who are you to tell Hashem to judge anybody? And who are you to even say such things at all? Judge yourself. You want to help somebody, tell them they're doing something, no problem. But judging, that's not our job. We're not the Sanhedrin. Sarai Imenu, Kodesh Kodeshim, uttered a few extra words with all of our holiness, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you asked me to judge Avraham. That means I also have to judge you. And when I judged you, I decided to shorten your life by almost 50 years in comparison to Avraham Avinu. Of course, she lived her life. She lived a full life. She's Kodesh Kodeshim. We cannot even beat the dust under her feet. But the point here that the Chachamim is saying to us here, what they're teaching us here, is that in the eyes of Avraham Avinu, like, listen, I love her. She's my wife. She's amazing. She's Kodesh Kodeshim. She's the greatest thing in the world. But she made a critical mistake. And due to that critical mistake, I cannot mourn her. I'm not allowed to mourn her the same level as I would if it didn't happen. Meaning that, Rabotai Karim, when a person understands the message from this week's parasha of how a righteous person doesn't get more righteous than Sarah Imenu, uttered a few extra words to a husband, needless to say, a husband saying, let Hashem judge you. Sarah, you made a mistake. That mistake was costly. Now, if it was costly to Sarah Imenu, that's a perfectly righteous person. If it was written inside the Torah with the special Chaf that we have to learn over and over and over again every single year for eternity, then that means that speaking idle words or forbidden words, which is what the Gaon of Vilna is talking about in this section of the letter, how much more so do we need to be careful of it? If someone as righteous as Sarah Imenu was judged that way, if someone as righteous as Sarah Imenu is noted in her own parasha, Chayei Sarah, tzadika, lived a life, amazing, all the good stuff, but that mistake, that deserves a small letter, a small chaf. Why? So you could learn about that small mistake that she made for eternity. If she as righteous as she is, our mother, most righteous person on planet Earth, ever, if she was judged so heavily for saying something we don't even think is a big deal, how will we be judged for the things that are a big deal? And we even know it because it's forbidden words, forbidden statements, curse words, all types of swears, all types of lies, cheating, LaShon HaRa, or most common, nonsense. Talk about sports, talk about markets, talk about all types of things that are not really necessary for your day-to-day life. If it's your job to talk about investments, that's one thing. But if it's not, why do you need to talk about it? Especially at Bet Knesset, especially on Shabbat, especially with people that have no rhyme or reason to have a benefit or a loss from the conversation. Maybe we should choose a different language. Maybe we should choose a completely different conversation. And if we can't come up with it, perhaps we should just shut up. I think we'll be better for it. Sometimes we need to know that the best thing we can do is be quiet. The best thing we can do is be quiet. Asked him, what can we do to protect ourselves from Chavrei Mashiach? And he says, Torah and Gemilut Chasadim. Even if somebody does a nice thing or learns a lot or anything like that, it's never compared to bringing one of Hashem's lost kids that's been lost for the last 3,000 years back home. One of the beautiful things that we have in our organization is that we have both Torah and Zikui Rabbi, because we have our kollels, we have our avrechim, and we also have our kiruv that we do around the world. Our lectures reach every corner of the world, Baruch Hashem, in multiple languages, but of course, we always want to do even more.
תות היו רגלינו בשערייך ירושלים, למעמד הנשגב והמרומם של סיום הש"ס, זוהר והשולחן ערוך, שעל ידי ארגון בעזרת השם העולמי.
יכול להיות שעכשיו אנחנו נשמע את השופר של המשיח.
נמצא איתנו כאן האורח מפלורידה, יושב ראש הארגון, מזכה הרבים, הרב ירון ראובן.
בעזרת השם כולנו נעשה ונצליח ונגדל בתורה ונזכה את הרבים ונעשה כבוד שמיים כמו שצריך.
אתם עמלי התורה, תמשיכו, תהיו אור גדול.
שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני
הזדמנות שאני מברך את הרב ירון ראובן שהוא זכה את הרבים ומחזיק תורה בעם ישראל בארץ וגם בתפוצות. אשריו ואשריך לכל, שימשיך עוד לעשות כאלה וכאלה. זכות גדולה מאוד שהוא מחזיק תורה בעם ישראל.
טוב, ש"סים נוספו הערב לעם ישראל.
לכבודה של תורה, להרמת קרנה של תורה, וכל הדברים הללו ברוך השם הודות לידידנו יושב ראש הארגון שעוד לא ידע את ההפתעה שתכננתי לו.
While we have queue of work that we've done throughout the whole year, we also have the Torah that we're constantly producing more and more of, and last but not least, the chesed to feed the poor people in Israel.
A very special thank you to all our amazing guests who show real Ahavat Israel by taking the time out of their busy schedule and sharing their ups and downs with us, all for the sake of Am Yisrael.
ארגון בעזרת השם הולך לחלק מאות סלי מזון בכל רחבי הארץ.
One of the big things that we have, aside from this campaign, you probably see this poster or something similar to it, is also we published some of the recent results that we have, or at least up to now, of the organization. And one of the reasons why we do this each year is because we want to make sure that our partners, our donors, our Talmidim know where their money is going. Unlike everybody else that, says a lot, does a lot, we want to show you what these results are. I can tell you from my experience and a little bit of knowledge about the whole Torah world, I don't know of anybody else, any other organization on planet Earth that produces dollar for dollar what we've produced over these last few years. This is nothing to be arrogant about. It's simply Siyata Bishmaya, Kadosh Baruch Hu helped us. We made every sacrifice that we can possibly make in order to make it happen. Producing nearly 300 films, publishing 32 books, our own books, giving out 154,000 books for free. Giving out 154,000 books is not a cheap endeavor. Anyone that wants to do such a thing has to be completely committed to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to his children, and most importantly, to have bitachon in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and his Torah. We also have fed over 160,000 people over these last several years. Each year, during Pesach, the high holidays, throughout the year, we help a lot of people eat, help make sure that they have groceries, food, all types of things. And you guys have seen many of the videos that are that we've produced over the years to actually show you the people that are getting this food. You have here 160,000 people have eaten, nearly 300 Torah films. And then on top of all of it, we have 1.4 million USB, CDs, and cards that have been given out for free. All of the work that we've done over the last 10 years on these USBs given out for free. Last but not least, 12,000 video and audio lectures available online in about 14 different languages for the world to watch for free.
הרבי ירון, רeuven, הרב אפרים כחלון, בשיר גבוה בעזרת השם, שעלו מעלה, כדי להצלחה והצלחה. זאת מוכרים מלא משאלות ליבה, בטובה ובברכה. וכל אשר יפנו, תשכילו ויצליחו. תזכרו לעשות כאלה וכאלה, הביאו תורה להגדרה, בין והבין.
ארגון בעזרת השם לקח על עצמו את אחת המטרות הקשות ביותר בדור שלנו, לתקן עולם במלכות שדי. לא להסתפק במשהו אחד, לעזור רק לאנשים מסכנים, רק לאנשים ניצולי שואה, רק לאנשים שלא מכירים את אלוקים, רק לאנשים שאין להם כלום בבית, אלא לעזור לכלל ישראל בכל מכל כל. וברוך השם, חפץ השם בידינו הצליח. למעלה ממיליון יהודים ויהודיות נעזרו על ידי ארגון בעזרת השם. רק תדמיינו לכם איזה עוצמה היה לכל אחד ואחת מהשותפים שזכו להיות כל אחד כפי כוחו ויכולתו, לאיזה תוצאות הצליחו להגיע ולאיזה תוצאות עוד יצליחו.
פורים שמח על לראות את השלטים. נעלה עכשיו למעלה, תנועה קצת את האש, את הלימוד. ברוכים הבאים, אפשר לראות כאן כולם יושבים לומדים. איזה רעש של תורה, איזה רעש, איזה רעש. הנה יש פה עוד בית מדרש, וגם פה יש השם הכל עמוס. פורים שמח, פורים שמח.
הדמיון הזה הוא לא דמיון כל כך רחוק, כי כמו שהתורה אומרת, בפיך ובלבבך לעשותו, ככה גם בדבר הזה. כל מי שירצה, כל מי שרוצה או רוצה להיות שותפים איתנו, עם הארגון הקדוש והנפלא הזה, שכל כוונתו לשם שמיים, להגדיל תורה ולהאדירה, להרים קרן התורה, לעזור לכל אחד ואחד מעם ישראל, בכל העניינים, כל המישורים, מהילד הכי קטן שצריך מטרנה וטיטולים, עד האיש הכי מבוגר שלעולם לא הניח תפילין, ורגע לפני המוות דואגים להניח לו תפילין. אם גם אתם רוצים להיות שותפים בכאלה דברים גדולים בעשייה של תורה ועבודה וגמילות חסדים, ברוך השם, ארגון בעזרת השם כאן לצדכם, לשירותכם, יחד עם כלל ישראל.
כמעט 1.5 מיליון דיסקים, דיסקונקים שחילקנו, כל הדברים האלה בחינם, יותר מ-12,000 שיעורים. אז כל הדברים האלה, מתי שבן אדם רואה כמה ההשקעה שלו, אם זה בבתים, מניות, בכל מיני דברים, והוא רואה שהמניה עלתה 10% במקום אחד ו1,000% במקום שני, אז הוא מבין איפה להשקיע פעם הבאה. ואותו דבר פה, יש הרבה אנשים שברוך השם צופים את השיעורים שלנו, שיעורים של הרב אפרים, שיעורים של הרב שרביט ושאר הרבנים בארגון, ועכשיו זה הזמן להיות שותפים בדבר הגדול שאנחנו עושים ברוך השם.
After somebody dies, their neshama naturally feels like it needs to be clean and like it needs to go to Gehinnom to go and clean itself so it could feel better after.
And one of the reasons why we do this, why we show these numbers, is because we want to show everyone what we've done to give you an indication of what we can do in the future. So this is the time where we need as much of your help as possible to push yourself more than you typically do. If you typically donate a couple $100, donate 1,000. If you could afford the 8,000, 15,000, 50,000, whatever you could afford, this is the time to do it, because this is going to be the help that we have to help all of these avachim, to feed these people, and perhaps BeEzrat HaShem one day to get that building that we've been wanting to build here in the United States, to build a community. But all of these things require millions of dollars. If not now, then when?